I apologize for my voice. I feel absolutely terrible today. I feel like Bomani Jones feels every Monday morning when ratings are released and his show on both HBO and TNT fails to make the top 150 on cable, further cementing his status as the premier huge embarrassing failure. Whatever I have caught, I started feeling it last night while I was in the shower. It was almost instantaneous. I felt fine all day yesterday. My throat was a little sore yesterday, but it was nothing major. Standing there in the shower last night, I started to feel nauseous. About an hour later, I started feeling even worse as I witnessed the worst basketball, the worst effort that I have ever seen in the NBA. My New Orleans Pelicans. This team is an embarrassment. Matter of fact, I am nominating the Pelicans for the upcoming Huge Embarrassing Failure Awards. Willie Green has clearly lost this locker room, but there is something else going on that we don't know about New Orleans. I think there is serious tension between CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram. There is a serious lack of leadership, too. This team has so many problems. I could spend the next hour pointing them all out, but I just don't have the energy to do that today. I have gotten to the point with the Pelicans where I just don't care anymore. This team doesn't care. Why should I? Apparently, though, I am not the only person feeling sick this week. ESPN college football analyst Desmond Howard, he's feeling a bit under the weather too. Imagine my surprise this morning when I see another employee at ESPN trying to spin something into a case of mythical racism. I swear to God, ESPN has the power to corrupt people better than Washington, D.C. Look what they did to Kendrick Perkins. For the last few years, Kendrick Perkins was one of the only voices of reason at the network. As is always the case, the woke fungus slowly started creeping in. The process of infection, always the same. Suddenly you start finding women like Rachel Levine attractive. You start dreaming of that sexiness, dong securely wrapped in thong. As the infection progresses, you begin seeing yourself as the ultimate victim. Once the fungus has taken over and you're diagnosed with stage 4 leukemia, a terminal disease with no known cure, you start seeing everything through the lens of mythical racism. It's happened to Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, Mina Kimes, Kirk Herbstreit. I cannot think of a long-term employee at ESPN who has not been infected with the woke fungus. Even guys like Kenny Mayne, who leave the network for one reason or another, they still carry on the tradition of wanker spanking. Imagine my surprise, though, when I see Desmond Howard flaunting his wokeness on social media, taking some innocuous situation where he makes himself the victim of mythical racism. I am sure all of us have dealt with some asshole on a flight before. The Lizzo who wants to hog the armrest while resting his 200-pound stomach on your knees. The climate change believer who is offended at your refusal to wear a mask, breathing your toxic fumes into the air. Before social media, if you found yourself dealing with some asshole on a flight or in line at the grocery store, you might share the story with your friends and family, then you move on. Hell, most of us normal people, we still handle situations like this today. We don't feel the need to draw attention to ourselves. We don't feel the need to turn ourselves into the victim seeking sympathy from lonely men in exchange for giving them fresh material to spank the woke wanker. But that is not how employees at ESPN are trained to handle situations like this. How many times have we seen Mina Kimes claim to be a victim of mythical misogyny? Look at these DMs I receive. These men think I know nothing about football because I'm a woman. No, they think you know nothing about football because you are not qualified to be an NFL analyst. That is not misogyny, that's common sense. I don't ask the guy who cuts my yard to handle my financial portfolio. Why in the hell would I seek analysis of the NFL from someone who's never played in the league? Over the weekend, Desmond Howard, he was a passenger on an American Airlines flight. Now, in his defense, he found himself in the worst situation possible. The seat he purchased was next to the male version of Lizzo. Not only that, the Lizzo he was sitting next to was also a complainer. The deacons call these people Karen. Kind of like Deacon Karen Phillips, who creates fairy tales of mythical racism for Deadspin. The masked Lizzo. He was complaining to the flight attendant that the masked Desmond Howard was sick and needed to be moved away from him or removed from the flight altogether. Now, on one hand, I can completely understand this complaint. If I pay the money for first class tickets, I don't want to sit next to someone who's infected with the woke fungus. The fungus is contagious. If you're exposed for long periods of time, you're at risk of infection. Don't take my word for it. Just look at what happens to everyone working at ESPN. Now, to be fair, Lizzo's complaint was unreasonable. For starters, if I am sitting next to someone on a plane that's feeling sick, I'm either going to tough it out or ask the flight attendant to move me. I'm not going to turn it into a spectacle. According to Desmond Howard, he was not even sick. He wasn't incessantly coughing like the Lizzo claimed. He simply cleared his throat a couple of times while wearing a mask. Lizzo was also wearing a mask here, so I would assume he lives in fear of the COVID. If that's the case, wouldn't he feel safe sitting next to a masked, coughing Desmond Howard? I thought we were asked to follow the Fauci. I thought followers of the Fauci believed masks were the ultimate protectors against those pesky germs. Desmond Howard took to social media to explain the situation. Watch for yourself.
So I'm on this American Airlines flight, and before we took off, the supervisor comes up and she speaks to the guy sitting next to me. She said, "You want to talk to me?" He said, "Yeah, I think you should remove this gentleman from the plane because he's sick." Talking about me. And I said, "I'm sorry, are you a doctor?" He says, "Well, you've been coughing all over the place." This is before we even took off, right? I said, "Well, you can leave the plane, take another flight, because I'm not leaving." All I was doing was clearing my throat. So Carol, the supervisor, she's looking, and guess what card he tried to play? He said, "I'm sure if you check our status, my status is higher than his." So I said, "Carol, yeah, check our seats and let me know whose status is the highest." And as you see, I'm still sitting on this plane. As a matter of fact, we're in the air right now. The caucasity of him, unbelievable.
First of all, I really don't understand this need, this desire some people have to make everything public. I have never understood attention-seeking behavior, which is exactly what this is. Obviously, neither man was kicked off the flight. They're in the air sitting right next to each other. There was a complaint. It was resolved. Move on. That's it. Other than drawing attention to yourself, besides seeking the sympathy of your lonely male followers, what was the purpose of Desmond Howard doing this? Was this his video application to club victim? We used to celebrate survivors. We used to celebrate people who refuse to be victims. Today, there is a segment of the population who celebrates the victim. In most cases, these people are victims of mythical circumstances, just like this case with Desmond Howard. Other than not understanding his need to make this public, I was actually agreeing with Desmond Howard through 90% of the video. Some asshole was making an unreasonable complaint. Desmond Howard stood his ground, refused to swap seats or leave the plane. I think most of us would do the same thing. But there were two parts where he lost me. The first was when the Lizzo wanted to compare statuses. We used to call this like a hypothetical dick measuring contest. Two dudes in a verbal confrontation where it turns into some ridiculous argument where they're comparing bank accounts or airline status in this case. For obvious reasons, we are no longer allowed to call it that. Even though someone has facial hair, doesn't automatically mean they choose to identify as a man. For all you know, they could be a dump diver in the WNBA. Obviously, Lizzo did not know who Desmond Howard was. I mean, this dude flies all over the country covering college football for ESPN. You saw him bragging about his status in the video. You don't want to get into a competition of status with me. I'm Desmond Howard. I work at ESPN, meaning I am confirmed as a grade A level shitfuck. Where Desmond Howard really lost me, though, was when he tried to turn this into a case of mythical racism, more specifically, a case of white privilege. The caucasity of this male birthing person. He has this inherent sense of entitlement because he lacks melanin. Last I checked, entitlement didn't care about skin color. The inclusion of that one word turned this minor altercation into a case of mythical racism and white privilege, where Desmond Howard was the victim. And look, I don't have a problem with Desmond Howard. I don't understand his obvious need for attention, but that's his right. If he desires attention, he has every right to beg lonely men on Twitter to give it to him. But this type of behavior, it's not an isolated incident at ESPN. Victimhood is prevalent throughout their culture. Seems like everyone at ESPN wants to be a victim. A couple of weeks ago, Kendrick Perkins gets publicly humiliated on national television by JJ Redick. What does he do? He tries to be the victim. How many times have we seen Ryan Clark break down in tears on ESPN as he shares traumatizing stories of fake racism that he dreamed about? Same with Dominique Foxworth. 2 or 3 times a year, Dominique Foxworth whines and complains about being misgendered. People see his name, think he's a woman, they hear his voice, and it confirms their suspicions. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the weird one for not sharing every detail of my life on social media. Maybe I'm out of touch for not seeking attention from strangers, but it is hard to deny the effect ESPN has on people who work there. You enter the company as a normal person, you leave the company with interesting new uses for the cucumber. Give me your thoughts. Desmond Howard publicly shares an altercation with Lizzo on a flight, spinning it into a case of white privilege. I don't think race had anything to do with it. Perhaps this dude was just having a bad day, or maybe he's upset because he's the size of a rhinoceros. I don't know. Was it white privilege, or was this another ESPN employee exploiting a situation to make themselves the victim? You let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys later.